The Silence of Bamboo, a Zen tale about loss and rebirth. In the mountains where bamboo grows beside ancient temples, there exists a truth few understand. The deepest pain can become the most compassionate teacher. This is the story of Keiko, a woman who lost the one she loved most, and how an old monk guided her through the darkest valley of the human soul toward an understanding that transformed her suffering into wisdom. Sometimes, tears are seeds, and from the seeds most watered by pain, the brightest understanding blooms. If you have known loss, or if you are accompanying someone through grief, this story is a whisper from the ancient mountains. You are not alone in your pain, and there is a way through it. Chapter 1. The Inner Storm. Keiko stood motionless before the freshly covered grave. Rain fell on her face, but she didn't feel it. She had lost Hiroshi, her husband of 30 years, in just 3 months, from diagnosis to the final breath. For days she had cried until there were no tears left. Then something worse came. A void so vast it swallowed all color from the world. The cherry trees bloomed outside, but she couldn't see them. The birds sang, but her ears only heard silence. Her children tried to comfort her. Friends brought food she barely touched. Time heals all wounds, they said. But Keiko felt that time had stopped the moment Hiroshi's hand had gone cold in hers. One sleepless, desperate night, she remembered something Hiroshi had once told her about a Zen monk who lived in the northern mountains. "If you ever lose yourself in darkness," he had said, "he knows the way back to the light." At dawn, without telling anyone, Keiko began her journey toward the Temple of Silent Bamboo. Chapter 2. The Laughing Monk. The path to the temple was steep and rocky. Keiko climbed for hours, her feet bleeding inside her shoes. Yet the physical pain was a relief compared to the torment within. When she finally reached the temple, she found an old monk sweeping leaves in the courtyard. His face was marked by 1,000 wrinkles, but his eyes shone with inexplicable joy. "Master," said Keiko, falling to her knees, "my husband has died, and I no longer wish to live. Teach me how to find peace, or how to die without pain." The monk stopped sweeping and looked at her with infinite tenderness. Then, to Keiko's surprise, he began to laugh. It wasn't cruel laughter, but deep and genuine, like the sound of a stream over stones. "Why do you laugh at my suffering?" she asked, feeling a spark of indignation pierce her numbness. "I laugh," said the monk, "because you've just asked the most important question of your life, and because you've walked here with bleeding feet, which means your heart still beats strongly, even though you believe it's dead." He invited her to stay. "Remain here for 3 months. I will not teach you anything. You will simply live according to our customs. At the end of that time, you may decide whether you have found yourself or are still lost." With nowhere else to go, Keiko agreed. Chapter 3. The Ritual of Water. Her first task was simple. Every morning at dawn, she had to walk to the temple's spring, fill 2 wooden buckets with water, and carry them back uphill. In the beginning, water spilled along the path. Her arms trembled. Her mind was a storm of memories. Hiroshi's smile, his final words, the moment his breath stopped. Each image stabbed her heart. One morning, as she climbed with half-empty buckets, she began to cry so intensely she had to stop. Sitting on the path, the water spilled around her as she screamed her pain into the mountains. The monk appeared silently. He said nothing, simply sat beside her and waited. When her tears subsided, he spoke. "The water does not fight the bucket that carries it. It doesn't resist being taken uphill. When it spills, it does not mourn. It simply flows where it can. And still, every day you return to fill it again." "What does water have to do with my pain?" asked Keiko, her voice hoarse. "Everything," replied the monk. "Your pain is like water. You can't stop it, and sometimes it will spill. But you can learn to hold it without being carried away by it. You can learn to walk with it." Keiko didn't understand then, but she kept walking to the spring every dawn. Chapter 4. the Garden of Stones. A month later, the monk led her to a garden filled with hundreds of scattered stones. "Arrange these stones," he said. "When you finish, you'll have learned something." "In what order?" asked Keiko. "The order is yours to decide," replied the monk, walking away. For days, Keiko tried different patterns, by size, by color, by shape. Nothing felt right. Every arrangement seemed wrong, incomplete, meaningless. One afternoon, exhausted, she sat in the middle of the garden and simply observed the stones without trying to move them. For the first time in months, her mind became still. Then she saw it. There was no correct order. Each stone was unique, perfect in its imperfection. Some rough, some smooth, some cracked, others whole. And together, even in apparent chaos, they formed a peculiar beauty. She began to rearrange the stones again, not seeking perfection, but honoring their individuality. She created a garden where the broken coexisted with the whole, where the empty spaces were as important as the stones themselves. When the monk returned, he smiled. "Now you understand. The emptiness Hiroshi left should not be filled. It should be honored. It is part of the garden of your life, as important as everything else." Something stirred in Keiko's chest. Not joy, not yet, but not despair either. It was something new, acceptance. Chapter 5, The Meditation of Bamboo. In her third month, the monk taught Keiko to sit in meditation facing the bamboo forest surrounding the temple. "Just sit," he said. "Observe the bamboo. Don't think about it. Simply look." The first days were torture. In the silence, thoughts of Hiroshi became deafening. She saw him in every shadow, heard his voice in the wind. The pain surged like waves that drowned her. But the monk had told her not to resist her thoughts, only to observe them as she observed the bamboo. So Keiko practiced. When a painful memory arose, she recognized it. There is the pain, there is the memory, and she let it be without holding on or pushing away. One windy afternoon, she watched the bamboo bend deeply under the gusts, almost touching the ground, but never breaking. When the wind passed, they returned upright, unharmed. "The bamboo doesn't fight the wind," said Keiko aloud. The monk nodded. "It bows. It respects the wind's power. But it doesn't break, because its roots are deep and its center is hollow, flexible." "My center isn't hollow," said Keiko. "It's full of pain." "No," said the monk gently. "Your center is full of love. Pain is only the wind blowing through that love. If you create space for pain to pass through, like bamboo creates space for the wind, it will not break you." That night, for the first time since Hiroshi's death, Keiko slept deeply. Chapter 6, The Letters No One Would Read. One morning, the monk handed Keiko a brush, ink, and rice paper. "Write to Hiroshi," he said. "Everything you never said. Everything left unsaid. Don't keep it locked inside." "He can't read it," she said. "He's gone." "The words aren't for his eyes," said the monk. "They're for freeing your heart." For days, Keiko wrote. She wrote about her anger at being left behind, her guilt for moments of impatience, her gratitude for 30 years of love, her fear of forgetting his laughter, her crushing loneliness at night. She cried over the paper. Some letters were long, others just a few lines. But with every word released, her chest grew lighter. When she finished, the monk asked her to bring the letters to the garden. Together, they burned them in a small brazier as the smoke rose into the sky. "Why burn them?" asked Keiko, watching her words turn to ash. "Because love doesn't need to cling to words to be real," said the monk. "What was true in those letters is already free. The smoke carries your message not to where Hiroshi is, but to where he has always been. Everywhere, nowhere, woven into the fabric of existence." Keiko watched the last letter burn, and she felt something extraordinary. Lightness. She hadn't forgotten Hiroshi, but something in her had transformed. Chapter 7, The Final Tea. On her last day at the temple, the monk invited Keiko to a tea ceremony. He prepared the tea with deliberate, slow movements. Each gesture was complete in itself. No hurry, no destination beyond the present moment. "The tea of today will never be the tea of tomorrow," he said as he served. "This moment with this cup in this afternoon light, it is unique, irreproducible, and therefore sacred." Keiko drank slowly, savoring. For the first time in months, she was completely present. "Hiroshi is gone," the monk continued, "and every moment you shared together was unique and unrepeatable. That is why it was sacred, not because he is here or not, but because it was real. And what was real never ceases to be real." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they were different now. They didn't burn. They were soft, like rain after a long drought. "Will the pain always be here?" she asked. "Love will always be here," replied the monk. "And where there is true love, there will sometimes be pain because life is change. But there will also be gratitude, sweet memory, and the capacity to love again, in new forms." Pain transforms. It doesn't vanish, it integrates. It becomes part of your wisdom. "How can I thank this pain?" asked Keiko. "By living," said the monk simply. "Living with an open heart. That is the only true way to honor the one you loved. Not dying with them in life, but carrying forward the flame you shared." Chapter 8. The Return to the Valley. Keiko descended the mountain with steady feet. The landscape hadn't changed, but she had. When she arrived home, her children were surprised. There was something different in her eyes, in the way she carried herself. That afternoon, Keiko went into the garden she and Hiroshi had cultivated for years. It had been neglected for months. She knelt in the soil and began to work. She planted new seeds among the old plants, pulled weeds, but left some wildflowers that had grown on their own. She made room for the new without erasing the old. Her daughter watched from the window, tears in her eyes. "Mom is back," she whispered. But Keiko knew that wasn't quite true. She hadn't returned to who she was before. She had become someone new, someone who had walked through the darkest valley and discovered that even there, in the deepest night, seeds of understanding waited to bloom. At night, she sometimes spoke with Hiroshi, not with the desperation of the first months, but with the tenderness of someone conversing with a beloved part of herself. She told him about her day, her small joys, her challenges. And when the wind moved the bamboo she had planted by the window, Keiko smiled. She had learned to bend without breaking. She had learned that emptiness was not an enemy, but sacred space. She had learned that the end of one form of love is not the end of love itself. Hiroshi lived on in every act of kindness she offered, in every moment of full presence, in the wisdom that pain had taught her and that she now shared with others who suffered. She hadn't forgotten. She never would. But she had learned to remember without drowning, to love without clinging, to live without his presence, yet with his essence woven into every fiber of her transformed being. And in the mornings, as she watered the garden at dawn, Keiko sometimes whispered the words the monk had told her when they said goodbye. True love doesn't end with death. It only changes form, like water turning to vapor, but never ceasing to be water. The bamboo whispered its agreement in the wind, and Keiko continued, one step at a time, living, loving, honoring life in the only way possible. By living it fully, even with a broken heart, especially with a heart broken and mended with golden threads. For in Zen, what is broken is not hidden. It is repaired with gold, becoming more beautiful for having been broken. And so the cycle continued. Loss and discovery, death and rebirth, pain and understanding. Always flowing, always transforming, like the water she carried from the spring each dawn. And in the silence of bamboo, we discover that love and loss are two faces of the same truth. To have loved deeply is both a gift and a training in letting go. And in that letting go, we find that we never truly let go, we only change the way we hold.